I've said before that Ultimate Basketball is the worst NES basketball game of all time. But many of you have told me that Magic Johnson's Fast Break is another competitor for the worst ever. And then you've got Harlem Globetrotters, which is one of the most horrendously boring games I've ever played in my life. There are a lot of really bad NES basketball games. However, these three games really stand out above the rest. I mean, games like this would make you hate your parents for the rest of your life if they gave them to you as a gift. These are the sorts of games that you ignore after you rented it from Blockbuster because you know that you're not going to touch it again after you've played it for like 5 minutes. And the funny thing is that all of these games are crappy for similar reasons, even though the games are also clearly all unique. Honestly, among these three games, Ultimate Basketball is the game that feels the most like an actual basketball game. You've got multiple teams to choose from, for example, and the names of some of these teams are excellent, such as the Detroit Unions. The New York Powers is another great team name. Now, Ultimate Basketball has some of the best team names out of any sports game that I've ever seen, like fictional sports game. It's up there with Quattro Sports Baseball Pros on the NES, which is a pretty obscure reference, a game you've likely never played, and an absolutely horrible game. As far as Ultimate Basketball is concerned, the other shame with this game is that it just plain out sucks. Anyway, Ultimate Basketball also has background music, which makes it stand out from the other two awful games. In contrast, Magic Johnson's Fast Break has only 2 teams and only lets you choose between different difficulty settings. The only sound when you play this game is the loud and annoying static sound that's supposed to be the crowd. It's like the early EA Sports games. Harlem Globetrotters does have this annoying music that plays sometimes, but it's mostly just silence. In the beginning, you can choose to play as the Globetrotters or the unnamed other team, which I guess gives you a little bit of variety. But this game just feels unfinished. Now, if we were going to give a score to the games, don't worry, I'm not going to do all that, but if we were, Ultimate Basketball would get at least some points for having, like a team select screen and for having like some music so the game is not so monotonous. But unfortunately, those would be the only points that we would give to Ultimate Basketball. Of course, the biggest problem with Ultimate Basketball is that it's almost impossible to throw the ball in bounds. This is especially difficult when you're right under the basket. It's not much easier when you're taking the ball in from the side, however. The problem is that the computer plays a full court press for the entire game. It's not just that this isn't realistic. The press is so accurate that you basically cannot get the ball in bounds unless you learn a certain trick. And it's just horrible, and it feels bad, especially if you're playing it for the first time. The thing is, though, that Magic Johnson's Fast Break has a similar problem. It's easy to get into this glitch where the computer just steals it every time you pass the ball in bounds. Fortunately, the computer doesn't do anything like that in Harlem Globetrotters. Instead, you've got to worry about a defender running backwards to instantly steal the ball from you, a play that you can't do anything about. Actually, all 3 games have problems similar to that one, so it's pretty common in these games to see the computer decide totally at random that it's just going to steal the ball from you and that there's just nothing you can do about it. So even if you're able to pass the ball inbounds by some miracle, you will still have it stolen almost all the time in Ultimate Basketball. This happened to me almost every time I figured out how to drive the ball up the court, and it was really annoying. And Magic Johnson's Fast Break has a similar issue. It gets to the point where you just don't want to throw the ball in bounds anymore. Now, almost every single NES basketball game has the same stealing mechanic. You run up to the player with the ball and you push the button to steal. And it makes stealing extremely easy in most of these games. Now, this is not particularly realistic, and it does kind of take the fun out of these games after a little while. For example, Tecmo NBA Basketball has a kind of annoying system where you push the B button over and over again to try to steal. Since the B button is also used to block shots, you spend the entire game pushing A to change to the guy closest to the ball and then spamming the B button. Double Dribble uses the exact same system, except there's no sound when you steal the ball, you just wind up with the ball. The computer in Double Dribble is also really bad at stealing the ball, it doesn't know how to get the rebound, and it can't defend that corner three. The most creative approach to stealing the ball comes from Neketsu Street Basketball All-Out Dunk Heroes, which is a Japan-only release, where you smash your opponents with random objects like this ladder. Unfortunately, of course, that game never came out outside of Japan. And that's just as well, since that game barely counts as a basketball game anyway. Now the thing is that the NES was not really capable of any sort of complex controller schemes for any games because there was like only 2 buttons. In general, you've got 1 button to change your player and 1 button to do all the defensive stuff. Now the reason why these 3 games stand out is because the computer steals the ball every single time it has the chance in these games, to the point where these games feel impossible. Now fortunately, there are things that you can do to get past the crazy computer defense in like all of them except Ultimate Basketball. In Ultimate Basketball, you always want to pass to one of the guys on the sides, never straight out in front of you. And when you take the ball up the court, you always want to go for the dunk since your shooting percentage is totally awful. The key to success in Magic Johnson's Fast Break is to run all the way down the court before passing inbounds. You then want to shoot nothing but 3-pointers, and you want to steal the ball as much as possible. Fortunately, Harlem Globetrotters at least has the decency to let you pass the ball inbounds. The key here is to play good defense and go for high percentage shots, not 3-pointers. Now imagine that, an NES game that actually lets you pass the ball in bounds, it blows my mind. Until you figure out the trick to getting the ball in bounds, both Ultimate Basketball and Magic Johnson's Fast Break will drive you nuts and will feel completely unplayable. Now that's the one advantage that Harlem Globetrotters has over those other 2 games. It's not a well-designed game and it's not fun, but at least you can pass the ball. You've also got trick passes and trick shots, which the other 2 games don't have. Now the graphics totally suck, but you can still perform some impressive dunks in this game. Some of these look like they belong in NBA Jam. You can dunk from almost anywhere in this game as long as you hit the right hotspot on the floor. Does that sound familiar? The trick is to push the B button to dunk, not the start button for the trick shot. And this is the only game I've seen that legitimately allows you to dunk from the 3-point line. So have you ever seen anybody do that in real life? Of course not. I mean, not even the Harlem Globetrotters could actually pull that one off unless you do it in the NES game. But there's actually one other NES game that sort of lets you dunk from 3-point range. For example, there's this optical illusion in Double Dribble that lets you dunk from the 3-point line. It happens because of this problem with how the graphics work. And it's fun to do this over and over again to try to get it to work right. Of course, the difference is that Double Dribble actually has good gameplay and good game flow. Harlem Globetrotters, in contrast, feels like it was programmed by a 5-year-old. But it's stuff like dunking from the 3-point line that really makes Harlem Globetrotters shine above those other 2 horrible NES basketball games. I think you can dunk in Magic Johnson's Fast Break, but it's a waste of time. Your strategy in this game needs to be to shoot as many threes as you possibly can. Your 3-point shooting percentage is the same as your 2-point shooting percentage, so you need to throw these up like you're Steph Curry. Seriously, plays like this look cheap, but this is legitimately the best strategy to help you beat this game. So I don't know, maybe Magic Johnson's Fast Break was a visionary game. Like maybe the programmers of this game knew that there was going to be this wave of 3-point shooting that was going to take over the NBA in the future. Maybe we should have been paying attention to this game all along. Meanwhile, I seriously do not know what strategy actually works for Ultimate Basketball. The reason this game is so horrible is because there's no strategy that works. Part of the problem is that it's impossible to get any rebounds, which means missing a shot is basically a turnover. Your best bet is to get to this screen since dunks can't be blocked. Still, I've never been able to score more than 30 points in a single game of Ultimate Basketball. And that's why I've always considered it to be the worst of the NES basketball games. Look, the thing is, when it comes to these 3 games, none of them are any fun. But at least I can, beat the computer in the other 2. I've played Ultimate Basketball like a dozen times now, and I still don't know what I'm supposed to be doing on offense. Once you figure out the 3-point trick, Magic Johnson's fast break is easy even on the hardest difficulty. Sure, the stats are ridiculous, but hey, at least I won. And the only reason my salary isn't higher is because I gave up a ton of points trying to figure out the right strategy. Meanwhile, Harlem Globetrotters is actually pretty easy once you learn how to activate the dunk animations. I was able to beat both Magic Johnson and Harlem Globetrotters in the hardest difficulty setting after just a little bit of practice. I'm not saying that I recommend either of those games, by the way, but I would say that both of them will give you a better experience if you play it than Ultimate Basketball. The reason why is because you can actually figure out how to beat those games. When it comes to Ultimate Basketball, you have absolutely no chance. Anyway, there's one other thing that we really need to pay attention to, and this is really important, right? The entertainment. As all gentlemen of culture know, cheerleaders play an important part in NES sports games. Tecmo Super Bowl set the standard for halftime shows by being both tasteful and attractive. Sadly, Tecmo NBA Basketball on the NES only gives you halftime statistics, no cheerleaders. That's a real bummer. Double Dribble wins in this category with a halftime show that is both interesting and attractive, well, as attractive as 8-bit short skirts can be. Now, I know that halftime shows and cheerleaders are not like a huge deal, but it really can help make an awful game at least somewhat bearable. And for some of these games, I would seriously rather play like a cheerleader dance game than the awful basketball game. Unfortunately, Harlem Globetrotters only gives you these cheerleaders on the side of the score, but at least they look nice. It's not much, but it's a lot better than Tecmo NBA Basketball, which gives you nothing. Ultimate Basketball has one of the best halftime shows out of any NES basketball game. Seriously, I don't know about you guys, but if they got rid of the awful basketball part of this game and only had this, I would be really happy. Meanwhile, Magic Johnson's fast break is a huge disappointment. All you get to see is Magic Johnson's disembodied head telling you to play better defense after you had 43 steals in the first half. Now, I mean, none of these games is going to give you like real life style cheerleading, right? It's not like if you go to like a baseball game in Taiwan or South Korea or something like that. But hey, I mean, at least it's something. And it really does help make up for a lot of the crappiness of these games. Anyway, personally, the cheerleaders and the humor are enough for me to consider Harlem Globetrotters better than the other 2 stinkers. While this game is horribly boring and really annoying, I still think it's the best of the 3. Magic Johnson's fast break is simply awful, but at least it's not hard once you learn the tricks. There is just something satisfying about embarrassing your computer opponent by draining threes like this. There's simply no way to redeem the awfulness that is Ultimate Basketball. Seriously, I've completely given up on this game. I'm never going to try to beat it again. Not even the red and purple cheerleaders in the halftime show can convince me to go back. Anyway, that's the reason why I think the Ultimate Basketball still gets the award for the crappiest NES basketball experience possible. But what do you think? I mean, do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there another really awful NES basketball game that I haven't played yet that I've been ignoring? Let me know what you think down in the comments.